Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Welcome to As Is Team Selection ahead of game week 32. My camera looks a little bit like I'm in a kind of a bit of a wonky house, but I can assure you that I'm not. Hope we're all doing well. Hope everyone's game week 31s were good. And you can see I got a green arrow, a slightly fortunate green arrow, as we will talk about in just a second. Hopefully everyone's tinkering with their free hit teams. I'm aware that quite a few of you won't be on free hits this week. Just as a warning, this stream is pretty much focused on my thoughts ahead of the free hit that I'm playing in 32. Might still be helpful, be talking about sort of the players that I think are the ones to be looking at, what my kind of watch list is, and how my team is shaping up. I'm seeing lots of people with 6, 7, 8 players locked in their sides. I don't have that. I'm toying with different options. There's a couple that I'm definitely going to be going for. I think there's quite an interesting pool of players to pick for, and I'm trying not to be swayed by things like price. To try and make the perfect team that hits my budget exactly. I think there's good options from cheaper sides. Palace, for example, with Eze and Ayew and Elise. Or even the Fulham Leeds game looks interesting. Even someone like Bournemouth, they played really well against West Ham. These teams have got cheap options that a lot of us might not be considering because we're going for the likes of Kane or Son or expensive players to try and fill up that budget. So that's one way I think we want to be looking at this is trying to build the best team for this week. The best team for this week. Don't worry about ownership. Don't worry about price. Don't worry about anything. What is the best 11 players that we can put out that we think will score the most points? That's what the free hit chip is all about. And I know it's a blank game week. I know there's less options than maybe in a normal week, but there's some good options and some players that we might not otherwise consider. Hi to everyone in the chat. Good morning to Yelena FPL. Good morning to Dixie Normaz. Good morning to Jim Hilkin. Big week of decisions, absolutely. Good morning to Alan's Red. Barvilla Sleepyhead. Yeah, my hair, I think it's probably a reference to my hair. A bit of a bird's nest. Probably needs a bit of a cut on that. Dave Air, morning. Has anyone told you you look like Adam Rowell? I don't know who that is. So, no. I get Jack Whitehall a lot. Everyone says I look like him. Well, I haven't had it in a while. Maybe when I was a bit younger and a bit more fresh-faced. Before we get into Game Week 32, let's talk about my Game Week 31. I played the wildcard chip. I got 69 points. Went up to 193,729 to Hayer in goal. And then a terrible defence of Porro, Dunk and Trippier. Dunk actually got auto-subbed in. More on the subs in just a second. March with 5. Talk about him in a second as well. Salah coming good with 14. Grealish with 7. Martinelli with 5. Mitoma with 2. Haaland with the big 24. And Kane with 2. So, yeah, there was disappointment. Spurs, obviously at home to Bournemouth, massively disappointed. Brighton assets against Chelsea. They won the game. Just the 1 assist for my 3 players in that. Just the assist for Martinelli. An assist and a couple of bonus from Grealish. And it was really Salah that kind of saved the game week. So, yeah, it was a bit disappointing. Scores were, kind of in and around the average. The one thing you might notice is, hang on a minute, where's Ollie Watkins? This brings me on to the bench. Watkins benched. Devastating, absolutely devastating. Made a last-minute switch of Watkins out for March. That cost me 11 points. I had Alex Moreno third bench. I thought Newcastle would win that game, in all honesty. That's why I backed against Villa. I know it was an away match for Newcastle. I know Villa have been good under Emery. I underestimate how good they have been. But, yeah, it was absolutely brutal watching that game. And the first game of the week as well. So, yeah, really disappointing watching Watkins absolutely haul. The worst part, though, was Ake missing out and getting Dunk off the bench and not Moreno because, I know a few people were giving him a bit of stick on the site and on Twitter, which is fair enough. And then, when Ake didn't play, I had a few messages of people saying, "Oh, at least you're getting Rain off the bench." And a few, you're getting Watkins off the bench. Yeah, very good, very good. But yeah, very disappointing. 27. I think I don't think I've ever benched 2 double-digit hauling players before. I'm less annoyed about Moreno. I thought Newcastle would score in that game. I know that he's got attacking threat. That's why I picked him up. I thought he had a big haul in him at some point. Wish it wasn't this week. But yeah, I thought Newcastle would score, and I wasn't going to play him. So I'm not too annoyed about that. But the Watkins March one, it was just a mistake. It's just an error. I do the Black Box podcast looking at mistakes. One of my biggest lessons is, not making last minute decisions, not making decisions 5 minutes before the deadline, because you make them with your heart and not your head. And it was a stupid decision. And I was rightly punished. But it was only 11 points. I still got a green arrow this week. So let's just move on to the next thing, really. Let's talk about, what should we do? Let's go to the watch list first. So obviously we're prepping for the free hit this week. I've changed the watch list a bit this week, just to reflect the kind of players that I'm looking at on the free hit chip. You can see it's quite a lot, really. As I was kind of putting this together, I realised there's quite a few players I'm considering. There might be other players that you're looking at. There's no Leeds or Fulham players here, for example. So there's options kind of outside of the core guys, but these are the ones that I'm looking at. The ones in green I've marked are the ones that I'm kind of definitely going for. At the moment, there's only 3. You've got Trent in defence, obviously playing this new midfield role, creating chances, looking good. Home game against Forest, who A, can't score, B, certainly can't score away from home. So I think, a clean sheet is pretty locked in for Liverpool. I know a lot of people are going for the double Liverpool defence. I think that's a key decision on the free hit. You go for the double Liverpool defence, but limit your options in their attack. They could get 5 or 6 or 7 against Forest at the moment. But you've got the strong likelihood of the clean sheet, and also you've got the attacking threat as well from the 2 fullbacks. Or do you play the new Klopp roulette that's going around in their attack? You've got the likes of Gakpo. Jota got the 2 goals, but was really, really poor for the first kind of 30, 35 minutes in that. Núñez was someone I was looking at, but obviously didn't start that game, did come off the bench and score. Who do we kind of pick from there? So lots of decisions around Liverpool, lots of decisions around Arsenal as well. I mean, the triple Arsenal attack is what I'm seeing the most popular. This kind of Martinelli, Saka and Jesus, kind of triple up. We might get some team news ahead of it. Maybe Jesus gets benched and Trossard comes in. Make sure you've got a contingency plan for that. For example, when he's surprise benchings before that Friday night game, I think if that does happen, we might see people moving back into defence as well. Like so Ben White's been picking up points. Zinchenko. Tierney's an option if Zinchenko's out again. Again, if that team news comes in, I'll put Gabriel in the watch list because I think he's the safest and kind of most secure route into that defence if you choose to go that way. So big decisions around those two teams. And obviously we're going to be taking in majority, if it's going to be on the free hit, going to be taking in sort of 6 from those 2 sides because they've got, arguably the best 2 fixtures at the moment in Southampton and Forest as well. So I think at the moment I'm leaning towards the triple up with Arsenal as well. Really trying to, it's not so much about Arsenal potentially scoring 5 or 6 goals in that. It's just making sure that if one of those players goes off, that you've got them. If you go for Salah and Martinelli, and Jesus gets a hat trick, for example, you're going to be pretty upset you didn't pick that. So buying tickets, as they say, to these raffles is a pretty good idea. I think I'm going to go with the double Liverpool attack as well. I think Trent and Salah. Obviously, actually, Salah should be green. There's no way I'm going out about Salah in this. He's an absolute lock-in into the team. It's just what I do with that 3rd spot. I think Gakpo's the one that I'm most interested in. I think he put in a kind of a really strong performance in that match. He's looking quite pivotal to the way Liverpool are looking to attack, whereas some of that other spot, with Jota and Núñez, there's even Diaz that can play there now. Firmino, does he come in, somewhere? Whereas Gakpo's got that versatility to play on the left and up front, as Núñez has as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Gakpo, Núñez and Salah front 3. I think that would probably be my prediction. But then you never know. Maybe Jota's done enough and impressed Klopp enough to have another go at that. So I'm seeing him in some teams, I'm seeing Núñez in some teams. People are really kind of backing different things on this. In terms of the stats, in terms of the non-penalty XGI per 90, this is all since the restart. You see Trent and Trippier are kind of at the top, 0.35, 0.34. Expected to get a return every 3 games. So, you're going to be lucky to hit some returns. But I think we're seeing from Trent at the moment that those returns are pretty likely, especially when you factor in the opposition as well. Robertson's down in 0.29. Trippier is an interesting one because Trippier is someone who you would think would be locked in your team. But I think if you are backing Spurs to score in that match, then I don't think Trippier is kind of as important as people make out. Newcastle have been leakier lately. They look like they've started picking up those clean sheets again. And then, against Brentford, they were conceding plenty of chances. In the last game against Villa, they looked all over the place as well. Spurs haven't impressed. They did manage 2 goals against Bournemouth. They attacked down the flanks. They found that weakness. We're going to talk about Bournemouth in a bit. But, the likes of Kane looked off it. The midfield didn't look right. The defence didn't look good. So if you think this is going to be a kind of a fairly comfortable, home Newcastle win, I think Trippier is an absolute lock-in. But if you are backing the likes of Kane and Son to score, I don't know why you would go for Trippier as well. I think it's much more, fun and exciting on the free hit, to back against the attackers and then to back the attackers and then go against the defence, the team they're playing at. And I think there's options in defence. You've got Anderson at Crystal Palace, really good looking home game against Everton, no attacking threat whatsoever. Same as the likes of Castagna, if you're backing them to do something against Wolves, or someone like Semedo or Kilman. For example, you've got Moreno at Villa. We've seen that he's got the assist now. Could have had another one as well, which would have been lucky. Very unlucky for me. 0.24 his stats as well. So you've got these kind of attacking options as well, and decent fixtures. So I think I'm probably going to be going without any Spurs attackers, which means Trippier will stay. But if I do decide to go for the likes of Son, then Trippier won't be making it into my draft. In midfield, I've got Salah on there, I've got Martinelli. They're the top 2 for non-penalty XGI per 90. Really, really strong options this week. I've got Sarabia in there for Wolves. Now, I have put a little star next to his name because I think he is a minutes risk. He's been getting subbed off at 45 minutes. But his attacking stats are good. 0.5 non-penalty XGI is high. And Leicester have a real weakness down the side that he plays at. So he could be a bit of a left field option for someone looking for someone a little bit different. Maddison's in there. He's very popular this week. I'm not really feeling the love with him too much, given his poor sort of output lately. You've got Gakpo and Saka, both on identical non-penalty XGI per 90, 0.43. Bowen, he's popular, 0.42, higher than teammate Ben Rama, but Ben Rama has got pens. I think that's an interesting one as well. Son, 0.39, really, really poor attacking stats for him, but did look a bit more lively in that Bournemouth game that we saw. And then Palace is a really interesting one. They've got a really good home game against Everton. They're scoring lots of goals lately. I'm seeing Eze switching into teams. I'm seeing Elise coming in. I like Ayew, Jordan Ayew. He's not exactly done much for us in the past as an option, but he's playing further forward with Zaha out. He's playing on the left. His XGI, non-penalty XGI per 90 is really low, 0.22. But again, we're looking at these weaknesses down the flanks, and Everton have a weakness down his side. So he is someone to consider. So I think, if you're looking for real kind of differentials this week, my 2 picks are Sarabia and Ayew. I never thought I'd be suggesting those this season, but it's free hit time. So, why not? Up front, we've got loads of options up front. Watkins is locked in. I'm not doing that again. Brentford have just conceded 2 goals to Wolves, so they're away from home. They're a lot better at home. But Watkins against his old club, I fancy that game. I like Tony as well in this match, a home game for Brentford. He does well in those games. His non-penalty XGI per 90 is high, and he's got the pens as well, just like Watkins does too. Elsewhere, Jesus has the highest non-penalty XGI per 90 of all players since the restart, despite fewer games. 1.21 for him looks a really good option, I think, for people looking for players, as long as he starts, unless we see Trossard kind of coming in. And then you've got Nunez, 0.79. He looks great. If he was nailed, he'd be 100% in my side. But there's question marks about whether he does play. I think he starts, but I don't think I'm willing to kind of make that risk with him. And then, you've got Wilson and Isak. I mean, Wilson 0.79, that's crazily high. When he starts, he gets really good chances and he tends to put them away. Isak's a bit further down, 0.54. I like the Newcastle attack at home at St James's Park against a really, really poor-looking Spurs defence. I mean, Bournemouth made them look like idiots at times. And I think, there could be goals in this match for Newcastle. So, again, if I knew Wilson was going to start, I think he would be one of my top targets. It might be a bit risky given that it's such an important game for Newcastle to try and get that top 4 spot. Maybe Howe goes for a slightly more conservative approach, which means Isak is probably the one to pick if you think Newcastle are going to do well. Kane is on there, 0.51. He's on my watch list, but he's not really someone that I'm looking at. I just wasn't impressed with him at all against Bournemouth. I know he's not kind of a really often a dynamic and kind of energetic player, but he was kind of ambling around at times, didn't really look interested. I think Son's a better pick than him, but there is a lot of midfield options as well, which is probably why I'm going to avoid Spurs altogether. But obviously Kane's got 98 points since the restart. I think it's sort of second, third highest on this list out of all these players. He's got the penalties, and I didn't back him against Brighton, for example, and he pops up with a goal from outside the box. So certainly not a bad option, but again, I think if you're going with Trippier, you avoid the Spurs attack altogether. Solanke's on here, got a massive haul against Spurs. I think he could have do a bit of damage against West Ham. We don't know what West Ham's going to turn up. Is it going to be a kind of a good defensively resolute West Ham side, that we've seen them picking up a couple of clean sheets lately, put a really good performance against Arsenal as well, coming back from 2-0 down. But I do still sense they're a bit leaky. And like I said, I was impressed with Bournemouth, going forward. So I think if you are backing West Ham to lose that clean sheet, then Solanke is the one to pick. 0.51 as well. It's decent, underlying stats, since the restart, matching Kane, for example, which is pretty crazy. Half the points, so worth bearing in mind. And then Jota's on here as well. Again, I think if we're going to need some team news from Klopp or any kind of indication about who's going to start in that match. If we get any kind of confirmation that Jota's going to play in that game from the start, then I think he's probably one of the best options on this list. But, if Klopp talks about using the squad and rotation and all that kind of thing, then maybe Jota's a bit too much of a risk. So that's the watch list. Let's talk about the kind of some of the stats I was looking at on Scout. So I find these really helpful in these kind of weeks. You're just kind of looking for something just to give you a bit of an edge. It's football, anything can happen. Teams that are conceding a goal a game can suddenly keep a clean sheet against a top side. Maybe Forest go and score 3 at Anfield. You never know what's going to happen, but all you can really do is, try and make the best decision you can with the data, available to you. So I just had a look at chances conceded down the flanks. Since the restart. Interesting that Bournemouth concede the most chances down both flanks of all teams in the league. It was definitely a tactic that Spurs used against them. They were, particularly in the first half, they were, mostly using Perisic down the left to try and make things happen, and he was having, amazing success down those flanks. So that's really good news for the likes of Bowen, for Benrahma. Maybe even a double up with those two players could be something that works really effectively, because they are going to get chances down those sides too. I mean, Spurs, as I said, focus down the left, which is Benrahma's side. He's got the pens too. He's going to be very, very low owned, so that makes him quite a nice option. I mean, looking at the right flank, Leicester a second, 55 chances conceded. Sarabia plays on the left, likely to get sub, likely to play reduced minutes, but all you need is for a couple of chances for him down that side to come in. Again, this is going to be a play that no one goes anywhere near as well. So, potentially a good option for him. And then Everton as well. Down the right, they're playing Palace. That's Jordan Ayew's side. That's why I like him as well. They've conceded the same amount of chances as Wolves, 48 down there alongside United. And Southampton, of course, and Martinelli will be lining up on the left against him. I also like Trossard as well. If Trossard comes in for Jesus, we know that Trossard tends to drift left too, and if Southampton have got that kind of weakness down that side, then I think we'll see Martinelli and Trossard really benefiting from that match. So yeah, lots to consider down here. I mean, you've got Forest as well. Forest have conceded 61 chances down their left hand side. That's Salah's side. That's Trent's side. As well. So we're going to see plenty of chances for them coming down those. So these stats are just quite nice, just to kind of give you a bit of confidence in some of the players that you're picking going forward. So do check out Scout, check out the members area. look at these tables. These are the team defence tables. You can also create your own custom tables as well to look at, some of the other things. That's where my watch list stuff comes from. In terms of defences, if we're looking for, kind of the teams to target against since the restart, Bournemouth are conceding the most chances per 90. So 52.8 minutes per XG conceded. For them, Leeds rapidly closing the gap on them, been so poor lately. It's just who do we pick out of that Fulham side with no Mitrovic there, which is why I'm kind of avoiding them. I mean, you've got the likes of Pereira, you've got Willian as well. Maybe even something like Tete at fullback could be an option. I think I'm probably just going to ignore that game though, because it wouldn't surprise me if Leeds suddenly came out that 1-0, something like that. Leicester and Everton, two teams that we want to target against. Wolves are tricky to know exactly who to go for against Leicester, but I've mentioned Sarabia. Everton right down there, Forest right down there, Wolves right down there. Now even Villa are down there. Obviously they've improved a lot under Emery. But these are a lot of the teams that are playing in this game week that we can sort of look to target with our team selection. Even West Ham are in the top 10. Conceding next year is 65.7 minutes, and the Bournemouth assets are very good. In fact, I think every team on this list is playing in Game Week 32, so potentially useful as you're picking your attackers to consult with these data tables. There you go. So this is the team that I'm currently on. As I said, this is in no way set in stone. I think there could be quite a few changes coming to this. I've gone for Pope and Trippier in goal. I really like Johnston, the Crystal Palace goalkeeper. I think he's going to make some saves. I think he's going to be, a good option this week. But if I'm going for Anderson in defence, I just think that the Crystal Palace double up in defence is a bit risky. And I think Newcastle are going to do the job over Spurs. So I'll either be going with the Newcastle double up in defence, I think, or I'll be going with a Son in midfield. That could go either way. So already that's kind of big changes. But I think I'm probably going to back the Newcastle clean sheet in this game. Trent's a lock as well. I've got Semedo and Zuma on there, just on the bench as two options that... I'm tempted just to fill my bench with like non-playing players, just so I don't have the risk. But again, it doesn't matter. If you've got points on your bench, it's not a big deal. Trying to think of the positive side. They could always come in. You might get a couple of injuries that you're not expecting. Salah, Saka, Bowen, Martinelli, Gakpo. I think that's pretty standard if you're not going with the Robertson and Trent double up as well. Like I said, there's options elsewhere. It's just who do you kind of take out of these players? Saka and Martinelli look really good options against Southampton. I like Salah. Gakpo looks really strong. I think that Bowen spot is probably the one that I could play around with a little bit. A Bowen, a Benrahma, a Sarabia, someone like that. I'm not sure who that's going to be. The fact that Bournemouth are so weak down those flanks, though, means that one of those West Ham wingers, I think, is probably quite important to own this week. And up front, Watkins and Jesus, with Isak, unfortunately, on the bench. So, yeah, lots of options. But I mean, you look at this team, and I think it looks pretty strong. There are, certain changes I can make in defence. I could bring Gabriel in, take, Jesus or Saka out. As I said, there's a few things I'm kind of contemplating. If we get some Arsenal team news and those three attackers start, then I probably will be sticking with those. If one of those drops out, then I will have to shuffle around the defence, and that could mean a spot becoming available for someone, like an Isak or a Benrahma or someone a bit different. So that's where I'm at the moment. Let me know what your free hit teams are looking like. Let me know what your non-free hit teams are looking like. How many hits are people taking? Which players are you getting on a hit? Because obviously you're not just, if you're taking a hit for a player, you're not just getting them for 1 week. You're getting them for a couple kind of going forward. So I think it's going to be a really interesting week for those not on a free hit, trying to kind of keep pace with people who are playing the chip this week. Or maybe you've got the chip and you're saving it for 34. Maybe your team looks decent and you're going to target the double game week coming up. So yeah, let me know what your kind of strategies and plans are. That's probably enough from me rambling on. 25 minutes. Dave, I also bench Watkins and March at the last minute. Yeah, I think we'll think we'll stick with that. We'll end with that. Nice to know I wasn't alone with that decision. Not my best, not my finest moment. But yeah, hopefully, can kick on from the green arrow. Just really targeting that top 100k. That's really where I want to end up this season. I think this free hit week's a big week for that. If I can even get a 50k rise, that takes me one step closer to where I want to be. Hopefully it'll be more than that. Don't forget, there won't be everyone playing their free hits, even though it feels like it when you're on the boards and on Twitter. But yeah, play your own game. Don't get swayed by ownership. And yeah, just try and target the players that you think are going to score the most points. Makes it sound so easy. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll be back again next week. We've got a midweek game week, don't forget. So yeah, nice quick turnaround if your free hits go completely tits up. But thanks for watching, and I will see you all very soon.